Ladies and gentlemen, worry feels like doing something, doesn't it? It feels active, like your brain is trying to fix the problem by thinking about it over and over again. Maybe if you keep rehearsing every possible scenario, you'll find the safest way through. Maybe if you plan for every disaster, you can stop it from happening. That's the trap of worry. It pretends to be productive, but in reality, it drains you. It's not a solution, it's a signal. A signal that you're depending too much on your own strength, your own timing, your own version of how life should be going. And the more you try to grip tighter, the more peace slips through your fingers. Most of us don't worry because we don't trust life. We worry because we don't trust ourselves to survive if things go wrong. We fear pain, rejection, loss, failure. So we try to micromanage every detail. We overthink every conversation. We check our phones obsessively. We plan for months ahead and still feel unsettled. Why? Because worry isn't about what's happening. It's about what might happen. And when you live in the future, you rob yourself of the present. You're here, but your mind is somewhere else, trying to control what hasn't even occurred. But worry is not your enemy. It's a warning light on the dashboard of your soul. It says, hey, something's off. You're trying to drive this thing on your own. It's the moment where you need to pull over, not press harder on the gas. Worry doesn't mean you're weak. It means you've reached the edge of your ability, and that edge is where God meets you. Not where you have it all figured out, but where you finally admit, I can't carry this alone. See, peace doesn't come from fixing everything. Peace comes from knowing you're not alone in what needs fixing. It comes when you stop playing God in your own life and let the real God take over. It doesn't mean you stop caring. It doesn't mean you become passive, but it does mean you accept that no amount of overthinking will ever outsmart divine timing. Some things have to unfold, not because you forced them to, but because you trusted enough to release them. Let's be honest, has worry ever actually made anything better? Has it ever given you clarity? Has it ever helped you sleep at night or feel more confident? Probably not. What it does is deplete your energy, cloud your thinking, and put you in a state of constant emotional debt. And worst of all, it fools you into thinking that your control is the source of your safety. But control isn't safety, it's an illusion. The more you try to control what isn't yours to manage, other people, the future, outcomes, the more anxious you become. That's because your soul knows something your mind resists. You weren't created to carry that weight. Here's the beautiful truth. When you start trusting God, you'll still have problems, but you won't carry them the same way. You'll walk with a different posture. You'll move through the day with a quieter heart. And when fear rises up, you won't silence it with panic. You'll silence it with surrender. You'll say, this is bigger than me, and that's okay, because I believe in something bigger than this. And that belief will become your anchor. You were never meant to be your own savior. You were never meant to have all the answers, all the plans, all the power. That's not weakness, that's divine design. Because the moment you stop trying to hold everything together, you finally have hands free enough to receive what God wants to give you. Real trust doesn't happen when everything is going right. Real trust happens when you say, even now, even in this, I believe there's a plan. So the next time worry creeps in, don't fight it with panic. Don't try to bury it with distractions. Listen to it, not to believe what it says, but to recognize what it's showing you, that you need to step back, breathe, and hand it over. Say it out loud if you have to. I trust you with this, over and over if necessary, until your heart starts to believe it more than your fear. Because here's the most powerful shift you'll ever make, choosing trust over tension. Not because you're naive, not because you don't see the problem, but because you finally realize that peace doesn't come from knowing what's next. Peace comes from knowing who's in charge of what's next. So don't wait until life is perfect to stop worrying. Don't wait until the outcome is visible to start trusting. Make the decision now. that even when you feel uncertain, you will choose trust, because worry will always want to sit in the driver's seat. But peace is found in handing over the keys. Many people misunderstand what it truly means to trust God. They think it means sitting back, doing nothing, waiting passively for life to change or miracles to fall from the sky. But that's not trust, that's resignation. Real trust is active. It's not about being idle. It's about knowing your role and knowing God's role. It's about releasing what is beyond your reach while staying responsible for what's within it. Trust is not laziness disguised as faith. It's courage in motion. When you trust God, you stop obsessing over the parts of your life you have no control over. You stop trying to manipulate other people's choices, force outcomes, or map out every detail of how your journey should unfold. But in that same breath, you also stop neglecting what is yours to do. Trust doesn't relieve you of action. It aligns your action with peace. It teaches you to take the next right step without having to know the entire staircase. There's a huge difference between surrender and apathy. Apathy says, it doesn't matter anymore, so why try? Surrender says, it matters deeply, but I trust the one who holds the outcome more than I trust my ability to predict it. That's a powerful shift. Because when you trust God, you start moving differently. You do your part with excellence, with focus, with faith, and then you release it. You stop spiraling into what-ifs. You stop tying your worth to the outcome. You learn to work hard but sleep well. Think about how freeing that is. You can give your best effort in your career, in your relationships, in your health, and still have peace at the end of the day, even if things didn't go perfectly. Why? Because your peace is no longer dependent on perfection. It's rooted in trust. Trust that if it didn't work out, it wasn't meant to, or that if it's not working now, something better is being built in the unseen. Trust doesn't prevent difficulty, but it gives you strength to keep walking forward in the face of it. Sometimes people confuse control with responsibility. They think, if I let go of this, everything will fall apart. But often, it's the very act of holding on too tightly that causes things to break. When you trust God, you learn to differentiate between what is your assignment and what is God's responsibility. Your assignment is effort. His is outcome. Your assignment is preparation. His is timing. You don't get to manipulate the harvest, but you are called to plant seeds. One of the greatest examples of this truth is peace in the middle of uncertainty. Anyone can feel calm when everything is working out exactly as planned. But can you feel calm when it's not? Can you keep moving forward, even if the road ahead is foggy? Can you still be faithful in your small steps while waiting for the bigger breakthrough? Trust says yes. Trust says, I may not know what's coming, but I know who's walking with me through it. That kind of inner security can't be shaken by circumstances. There's a story in your own life, probably more than one, where you did everything you could and still felt helpless. You showed up, you gave, you tried, and things still didn't go the way you expected. Maybe it was a relationship, maybe it was your job, maybe it was your health. And in that moment, you had two choices: let bitterness take root or lean deeper into trust. The moment you chose trust, even if it was shaky, you activated a kind of quiet power inside yourself. You said, I'm not giving up. I'm giving it over. That's the difference. Giving up means defeat. Giving it over means surrender. You're not abandoning your dreams or responsibilities. You're simply saying, I'm done trying to be the architect of every single outcome. I'll keep building with what I have, but I'm not going to break myself trying to control what I can't. So trusting God doesn't mean stepping back from life. It means stepping up with clarity. You start showing up with less anxiety and more intention. You stop chasing things out of fear and start choosing things out of wisdom. You take risks, but they're rooted in peace, not desperation. You pray, you plan, you move, and then you let go of the results. And in that letting go, You discover a version of freedom the world can't offer. Because in the end, peace isn't found in doing nothing. Peace is found in doing the right things without trying to do everything. It's found in showing up every day with trust that what you plant, what you water, what you nurture in faith will grow in the right time, in the right way. Maybe not how you imagined, but maybe, just maybe, better. There's a common lie that keeps people distant from faith. It's the idea that you need to clean yourself up before you come to God. That you need to be healed, polished, confident, pure, emotionally stable, before you're worthy of His attention. But here's the truth that will flip that lie on its head. God never asked for perfection. He asked for presence. He never required your strength. He simply wanted your surrender. You don't have to be whole to be held by Him. In fact, it's often in your most broken, vulnerable, and defeated moments that He draws closest. There's something sacred about brokenness, though we don't like to admit it. Most of us are taught to hide it, to cover it up with strength, to numb it with distraction. But God doesn't turn away from brokenness. He moves toward it. He is drawn to the pieces of your heart that feel too jagged to be healed. And not only does He come near, but He starts there. He begins restoration where the world told you it was over. That place in you that's still bleeding, still scared, still asking why, that's the place He puts His hand on, not in judgment, but in compassion. If you've ever thought, I'll come back to faith when I'm better, or I'll start praying again once I fix this habit, then you're believing the wrong version of grace. Grace isn't earned. It's not a reward for good behavior. It's the unearned, undeserved, relentless love of a God who wants you, not your image. He wants your honesty, not your performance. He wants your reality, not your mask. And when you give Him that, when you drop the act and come to Him with your pain, your shame, your regret, He doesn't flinch. He doesn't pull away. He leans in. This is what makes real faith so beautiful. It's not a self-help project. It's a relationship, and like any good relationship, it's built on honesty, not perfection. Think about the people you love most. Isn't it true that your bond is deepened not when they impress you, but when they're real with you? When they cry in front of you, when they confess their flaws, that's when trust is built. That's when love is proven, and that's what God desires from you. Not your perfection, but your presence. So if you're feeling broken, discouraged, ashamed, or too far gone, hear this. You are not disqualified. You are not too messy. You are not behind. You are exactly where you need to be to experience the radical love of a God who heals. Sometimes it's in the breaking that the real work begins, because until you come to the end of yourself, you'll always be tempted to rely on yourself. But when you reach the point where you say, I can't do this anymore, God says, finally, you're ready for me to step in. He's not interested in watching you pretend to be okay. He's not impressed by your curated version of life. He sees through all of it, and still He stays. He sees the parts you hide from others, the doubt, the addiction, the jealousy, the anger, the fear. And He doesn't walk away. He kneels beside you and whispers, even this. I can work with this. That's the kind of love you were made for. Not a love that waits for you to be perfect, but a love that carries you through the process of becoming whole. And when you let Him meet you in your brokenness, something begins to shift. Your healing may not be instant. Your circumstances may not change overnight, but your heart softens, your hope revives, you realize you're not doing life alone, you're not responsible for fixing yourself on your own. There is a grace that walks with you, strengthens you, lifts you right in the middle of your mess. And sometimes, that's all you need to take one more step. So stop trying to hold it all together for appearances. Stop waiting for the moment you finally feel worthy to come back to God. That moment is now. Come tired, come confused, come with your doubts, come with your disappointment. Just come, because the lie that says you need to be better first is designed to keep you from the only one who can actually help you heal. What if the thing that feels like your greatest weakness, the wound you try to hide, is actually the door to deeper intimacy with God? What if your breaking point is the breakthrough moment He's been waiting for? Not so He can punish you, but so He can restore you, so He can show you that your value was never in your perfection, but in the simple fact that you are His. You don't need to have it all together. You don't need to fake strength you don't feel. You just need to be real, because God is not asking for more of your performance. He's asking for your permission to love you right where you are, to remind you that your story is not finished, that your brokenness is not the end, but the beginning of something beautiful. Worry is the thief that robs you of peace in the present moment. It sneaks in quietly, sometimes even disguising itself as responsibility, as logic, or as preparation. But at its root, worry is fear dressed up in planning. It's your mind rehearsing disaster, replaying all the things that could go wrong as if doing so will somehow prevent them. It never does. What it actually does is drain your strength, distort your thinking, and disconnect you from the life you're living right now. Worry puts you in tomorrow's problems without any of tomorrow's grace. When you let worry run unchecked, it makes you a prisoner of scenarios that haven't even happened. You start preparing for things that may never occur, losing sleep over conversations that might never take place, and wasting energy on people who aren't even thinking about you. Worry convinces you that hyper-vigilance is a form of safety, when in reality it just keeps you in a cycle of anxiety and exhaustion, and the worst part is, it solves nothing. You're not actually safer, more prepared, or more protected. You're just more tired. Trust, on the other hand, is not blind ignorance of reality. It doesn't mean you stick your head in the sand and pretend everything is okay. It means you choose to root yourself in peace despite uncertainty. It means you acknowledge what's out of your control, and you actively hand it over to the one who can handle it. Trust says, yes, this is scary. Yes, I don't know how it will all work out, but I refuse to carry the weight of something I was never built to carry. Trust doesn't silence your emotions. It gives them a safe place to rest. One of the most liberating truths you can hold onto is this: you are not in control of everything, and that's okay. You were never meant to be. There is freedom in realizing that you can't predict every outcome, anticipate every crisis, or plan for every twist and turn. What you can do is be faithful with what's in front of you today. You can breathe. You can pray. You can be present. And in that presence, you'll discover a peace that worry can never offer. Trust anchors you in this moment. Worry pulls you into a future you haven't lived yet. And it's not just your mind that suffers. Your body does too. Stress, illness, sleeplessness, emotional fatigue. These are often the fruit of chronic worry. And what do we have to show for it? Maybe you've spent days worrying about losing your job, your relationship, your health, and later realized those things didn't happen. Or maybe they did happen, but your worry didn't stop them. It only made you suffer twice. Once in your imagination, and once in real life. The power of trust is that it centers your focus on what you can actually influence, your attitude, your actions, your thoughts, and your connection to something bigger than yourself. When you choose trust, you are choosing peace, not because the world is peaceful, but because you are grounded. You are choosing to believe that even if the outcome isn't what you hoped, you will still be held. You will still have strength to move forward. You will not be abandoned in your pain. Some of the most powerful people you'll ever meet aren't the loudest, the richest, or the most visibly successful. They're the ones who have learned how to stay calm when everything around them is chaos. They have learned to walk through storms with a quiet confidence, not because they have all the answers, but because they trust the one who does. That kind of peace is contagious. It doesn't come from a life without problems. It comes from a heart anchored in faith. When you choose to trust instead of worry, you reclaim your life. You become present again. You start noticing things, simple joys, unexpected beauty, small wins, that you missed when your head was spinning with fear. You laugh more, you sleep better, you stop holding your breath. Trust brings color back into your world, worry bleaches it out, and here's the honest truth. The circumstances of life might not change tomorrow. The diagnosis might still come, the person might still walk away, the plans might still fall apart, but when you walk in trust, you are different. Your peace doesn't vanish with bad news. Your identity doesn't collapse when things go sideways. You become a steady, rooted person in a chaotic world, and people will notice. So ask yourself, what is worry actually giving you? Is it making you stronger, smarter, closer to joy, or is it just wearing you down day by day? And if it's the latter, maybe today is the day to start releasing it. Not all at once. Maybe just one thought, one fear, one burden. Hand it over. Let go of the illusion of control and breathe in the freedom of trust. It's not weakness, it's wisdom. Peace is possible, not when everything is perfect, but when you stop letting worry write your story. Trust invites you into a new narrative, one where you're supported, guided, and never alone. You don't have to figure everything out. You just have to believe that there's a greater plan at work, and your job is to keep walking in peace, one step at a time. There's a moment in every life where we ask the question, why isn't this happening for me? It could be a relationship that didn't work out, a dream that keeps stalling, a door that won't open no matter how many times you knock, and in that space, between our desire and the silence, we feel frustration, confusion, sometimes even betrayal. You may look up and wonder if you're forgotten, if your prayers are lost in the wind, if God even hears you anymore. But what if you're not being ignored? What if you're being protected? What if every delay has purpose, every detour has a lesson, and every no is a setup for something greater? We live in a world of instant gratification. We're conditioned to believe that if something isn't happening quickly, it isn't happening at all. But that's not how faith works. Faith is developed in the waiting. Faith is not a shortcut. It's the long road that strengthens your trust, your patience, and your character. When things don't go your way, that doesn't mean they're not going God's way. And sometimes, what feels like a setback is actually preparation. Sometimes you're not being punished, you're being refined. Think about this. You may have been ready for the blessing, but not ready for the responsibility that comes with it. You may have been emotionally available, but not emotionally mature. You may have had the desire, but not the depth. And so, the delay isn't denial, it's development. It's the space where God grows you for what you've been asking for. Because a good God doesn't give you something that will destroy you. He gives you something when you're ready to carry it with wisdom, humility, and strength. Delays often feel like rejection, but they're actually redirection. You might be chasing something that looks good on the outside, but would have crushed you on the inside. Maybe the relationship you begged for would have ended in heartbreak. Maybe the opportunity you prayed for would have distracted you from your purpose. Maybe the path you were forcing would have led you far from peace. You don't see all that in the moment, you just see the closed door, but one day you look back and say, thank God that didn't work out. That's hindsight. Trust is having that perspective before you see the reason. There are people right now living lives they once cried over not getting. They're in careers they didn't plan for but now love. They're married to someone better than the person who ghosted them. They're walking in peace because the path they wanted wasn't the one they needed. That's the mysterious beauty of divine timing. It rarely follows your schedule, but it always fulfills your purpose. You are not forgotten. You are not overlooked. The timeline you imagined may be delayed, but your life is not off track. You are still in motion, still becoming, still protected. Sometimes the greatest act of love is when God withholds something you think you need, because he sees what you don't. He's not just answering your request, he's considering your future. He's aligning your growth, your healing, your maturity, and your readiness so that when the door opens, you're not only grateful, you're prepared. Waiting is hard. Let's not pretend otherwise. It's filled with uncertainty, comparison, and often silence. But just because God is silent doesn't mean he's still. Behind the scenes, things are shifting, hearts are changing, opportunities are aligning. He is working in ways you cannot see, orchestrating things with more wisdom than you can imagine. You may not have evidence yet, but that doesn't mean nothing's happening. Faith means trusting that even in the invisible, progress is being made, and what's more, God uses detours for your development. The path you didn't expect may lead to the strength you didn't know you needed. The pain you didn't ask for may build the compassion you'll use to help others. The delay you resented might be the season where your foundation was laid. Nothing is wasted when you trust God, even your mistakes, even the heartbreak, even the years that felt lost. When placed in His hands, they become part of the masterpiece He's building out of your life. So, stop assuming that silence means absence. Stop believing that delays mean defeat. Start trusting that you are being led, even when you don't understand the route. God's timing is never about speed, it's about preparation. He's not just interested in what you're waiting for. He's interested in who you're becoming while you wait. You may not understand the reason behind the delay today, but one day you will. One day, you'll connect the dots and see that every closed door, every waiting season, every unanswered prayer was building a version of you that was stronger, wiser, and more aligned with your purpose than you ever imagined. In the meantime, hold on, stay faithful, trust the process. What you're waiting for is not gone. It's simply arriving on a divine schedule, and when it does, it will be worth every moment you spent wondering if it ever would. Life has a strange way of making sense only when you look backward. In the moment, everything can feel random, confusing, or even unfair. You face challenges you didn't expect, delays you didn't plan for, and heartbreak you didn't see coming. And during those moments, you ask yourself questions that don't seem to have answers. Why this? Why now? Why me? It's in those seasons, when everything is unclear, that trust becomes more than a concept. It becomes a choice, a daily, even hourly decision to believe that what doesn't make sense now will one day become part of a bigger, more beautiful picture. We live in a world that conditions us to demand answers. We're told that if something doesn't add up right now, it must be wrong, but that's not how faith operates. Faith doesn't always provide explanation. It invites you to walk forward even when the path ahead is foggy. And that's where the greatest growth happens, not in the clarity, but in the uncertainty, not in the map, but in the movement. You don't need to understand the full plan to keep going. You just need to know the one who wrote it. Some of the greatest breakthroughs, the most meaningful relationships, and the most pivotal decisions in your life will come out of moments you didn't understand at the time. Maybe you were rejected from a job and felt like a failure, only to later be led into a role that transformed your life. Maybe someone you cared about left, and it devastated you, until you realized it cleared space for someone who could love you better. Maybe you hit rock bottom emotionally, only to discover a strength and resilience inside of you that you never knew existed. In hindsight, these moments make sense. They had purpose, they were preparation, but at the time, they just felt like pain. That's what makes trust so hard. It requires you to surrender your need for immediate understanding. It asks you to lean on something higher than logic, deeper than feelings, and stronger than circumstances. You don't always get to see the full picture while you're in the frame, but you can trust that there is a picture. You are not wandering aimlessly, you're being guided, shaped, and positioned, even if it feels like standing still. Trust reminds you that God isn't just writing a moment, He's writing a story, and like every good story, not every chapter is easy, but every chapter is necessary. One of the most powerful realizations you can have is that you are not alone in your confusion. Everyone has seasons where they don't get it, where they can't see the why, where they question the timing, the pain, or the silence. But the people who come out stronger are the ones who didn't let uncertainty paralyze them. They didn't wait for perfect clarity to keep moving. They kept showing up. They kept believing. They kept doing the next right thing. That's the power of trust. It keeps you grounded when your emotions want to pull you off course. Trust also helps you let go. When you try to control every outcome, you live in a constant state of tension. You hold so tightly to your expectations that there's no room for grace to work. But when you trust, you release that death grip on your plans and make space for something even better, something more aligned with your purpose. Something you may not have even known to ask for. The truth is, your life is not happening by accident. It's being orchestrated by a hand that sees what you can't, a hand that is weaving every experience, good and bad, into a tapestry you may not understand now, but will one day look back on in awe. That doesn't mean you won't cry. That doesn't mean you won't feel lost, but it does mean that even your pain has a place in the purpose. Some of the most beautiful things grow in the dark. Seeds become trees in the unseen soil. Diamonds are formed under pressure. Gold is refined by fire, and your character is strengthened in seasons of uncertainty. When you trust through the unknown, you are being refined, not ruined. So if today doesn't make sense, that's okay. You're not failing for feeling confused. You're not weak for not having all the answers. You are human, and being human means embracing mystery. But you don't have to do it alone. You can anchor yourself in the truth that you are not abandoned. You are not without purpose. You are not without guidance. One day, you will look back on what confused you and you'll smile, not because it was easy, but because it led you somewhere better. One day, the pieces will fit. The lessons will surface. The pain will have transformed into wisdom. And you'll realize that even when you didn't understand the plan, the purpose was unfolding the entire time. So for now, take a breath. Let go of the need to have it all figured out, and trust that what's meant for you is not lost. It's just unfolding on a timeline far wiser than your own.